So the next topic that we're looking at in psychology is memory. So as you probably know, memory is a super important process that kind of shapes how we live and the decisions that we make. So it's a very interesting unit to kind of learn about, and hopefully you will think the same way. Okay, so I'm uploading all of these PowerPoints on Daymap, so you can go back and watch this video if you like. It's from Crash Course on YouTube. I'm sure you've probably heard of them before, but they have got heaps of great psychology videos on there. So, if you're revising these topics, it can be good to go back and have a look and listen to someone else talk about psychology. This video is quite long. You only have to watch it to about 2 minutes because then it goes into some deep processes that you don't really need to know about yet anyway. Okay, so there are 3 basic memory processes that every memory we make has to go through. So the first is called encoding, the second is called storage, and the third is called retrieval. So the diagrams here kind of show you what they are, but we're going to talk about each of them in detail next. Okay, so the first step in this process is encoding. So encoding is when we convert information from our environment into a form that can be represented or retained in memory. So this can be an unconscious process, but it can also be a conscious process of us consciously trying to encode this memory so that we remember it. So usually these memories are in one of 3 forms. So visual, so what we see, acoustic, what we hear, or semantic, what it means. So for example, you might be trying to remember a password. So if you wanted to encode it visually, you could visualize the words or symbols in your head. Acoustically, you could repeat the password verbally or in your head as well until it is encoded into your memory. And then the last one, semantic, so you could give the password meaning. So if you've got a password that's just random numbers or symbols and doesn't make sense, you can put a meaning behind it so that you'll remember it easier. So for example, your password could be MDN, and you could make that an acronym that stands for My Dog's Name. The second step in this memory process is storage. So this is when we retain information in our memory so it can be used and retrieved later. So this is a very organised process inside of our brain because obviously we've got so many memories in there, so many different times, places, themes, etc. So it's very organised so that it's easy to retrieve for us later. So a good way to think of it is like a library. So you've got different sections for different themes and you can easily find that information. So the last step in this memory process is retrieval. So this is the process of locating and recovering information stored in memory so that we are consciously aware of it and so that we can use it. So this is usually one of 2 forms. So recall, so you might retrieve information with few if any cues. So if you think back to psychology tests that you've done, a short answer question is kind of 1 sentence usually, and you have to recall all the information in response to that. So that's a recall question because you've got very little hints as to what the information should be. And then recognition, you have to correctly identify the learned information from a set of alternatives. So like a multiple choice question, the answer is there, you just have to be able to recognise which one it is. Okay, so the next activity that you're going to do is a little test your memory worksheet. So the link is on Daymap. I would like you to go through and watch the video, and then there are activities for this week and it's the first one on there, so it's called Test Your Memory Worksheet. And so basically you've probably seen this video before, but you can watch it again. It went quite viral a few years ago, but I just want you guys to see how much you can remember and also see if you can figure out whether the question is a recall question or a recognition question. Alright, so we're going to look next at how a memory moves. So this is a 5-step process, and the first step is that there has to be a stimulus from the environment. So there has to be something happening in order for us to form a memory about this. So this could be anything like the thing that's happening in this video, or someone talking to you, or something you read, but we just have to be interested in it. So step 2, it interests us, so we pay attention to it. If you're not paying attention to something, you're not going to remember it. Alright, so the third step in this process is encoding. So if you think back, this could be visual, it could be acoustic, or it could be semantic. So in this case, the stimulus is quite a visual one. You see a guy fall into a fountain, you're quite likely to picture that again in your mind and laugh about it maybe. So the fact that you're actively thinking about it and actively remembering it encodes it and turns it into a memory. So the fourth step is storage. So you store the memory amongst similar memories. So it might relate to a funny video compilation that you watched where distracted people injured themselves, or maybe it reminds you of a time that you somehow fell into a fountain. Basically, it gets connected to all these other memories that you already have, and it forms this big semantic network that we'll learn about later. The last step is retrieval. So one day you might see someone walk into a pole while they're on their phone. This reminds you of the memory, and so you recall it, and then you tell your friend about the time that you saw this memory happen. So seeing something similar to the memory triggers it, and then you say that memory again to your friend and you've recalled it. Okay, so we're just going to go through an example now just so that you can see the kind of 5 steps in action. So I've chosen to do getting swooped by a magpie because this is something that has happened to me a weird amount of times, and so it's quite a strong memory for me to be able to talk about. So the first thing that happens, so your stimulus from the environment, you might get swooped by a magpie. The next step, you are maybe terrified, and so you pay attention to this event and it becomes a memory for you. The third step, if you remember, is encoding. So you might encode it semantically. So you might associate this memory with fear, and having this meaning behind it makes the memory very potent. So fearful memories are very strong memories. The fourth step was storage. So the memory might become a phobia and it could get stored in your brain with section of things to be scared of. And then your last step is that you retrieve the information. So you might be out walking one day and a magpie might appear. This triggers your memory and you might run off or avoid the magpie because due to your past memory, you recognize that you might be in a dangerous situation.